Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Amanda and today I'm going to be chatting through all the books that I read in the month of July. July was an interesting reading month. I feel like I have a decent mix of not so great books, pretty good books, and I only had one 5-star for the month, which is not bad, but always hoping for more. So without further ado, let's get into the books. Starting off with a DNF, which is not a great way to start. I DNF'd my in-person book club pick for the month. I know. And that was Darkwater Daughter. I was just not interested in this book at all. I got, I think, like 25% into it, and at that point I was just forcing myself to read it. It really wasn't intriguing to me. I didn't really care about the characters. It had pretty decent writing, I would say, and I believe it was like a pirate romantasy story, which is like so my speed, but it just was not pulling me. So I ended up DNFing it, and I actually didn't even attend book club because I had to work, but I think it's a good book and I would recommend it to most people. It just was not what I was looking for at the time. The next book I have to talk about is Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. I haven't read everything by this author, but I did read, I think I've read a handful of his books. I think my favorite is The Only One Left. That one was so good to me, but this one was not good. So in this story, we follow our main character whose childhood best friend was kidnapped in his own backyard when they were doing a backyard sleepover, like sleeping in a tent, and the tent was ripped open, his best friend was yanked out, and the kid was never seen again. And it's just been something that has plagued him his entire life since that incident, but he's always kind of wondered if he's still alive somewhere. And so we spend this book, I think he's in I think our main character's like in his 30s at this point, and there seems to be some mysterious things that might be leading him to believe that his best friend might still be alive. And the whole story itself was kind of boring. I didn't find it super interesting, and then the big reveal at the end was so dry to me, and it just kind of made me roll my eyes. So I gave it 2 stars. I really was not impressed with this one, and I will continue to just borrow Riley Sager books from the library because I'm really glad I didn't spend like $30 on this. Next up, I read an arc of This Ravenous Fate by Haley Dennings. This comes out in August. It should actually be out by the time you see this video, and I am so glad to have gotten an arc of this book, so thank you to the author and her amazing publisher for sending me a copy. I'm really glad I had an opportunity to read this book early because it was genuinely so good. Like, I'm not even kidding. So this is a romantasy, I guess you could say, that is sapphic, and the relationship we follow in here is just so good. Like, it's like friends to enemies to lovers, which is just an elite combo. So we follow our main character, I'm forgetting her name, Elise, and she is part of the powerful Saint family in Harlem, New York, and they are the ones who fight back against the vampires of this world. And we also follow Layla, who is a vampire, and Layla and Elise were really close friends as kids, but due to an incident that happened with them, they're no longer on speaking terms. But they have to work together as the plot is thickening in this world, and they have to come together to find out what is happening to the Reapers, which is the vampires in this world. So this was really good, and it reads so quickly. And this is coming from someone who doesn't read YA anymore. I truly had the best time with this book. I thought it was so fun, and I just flew through the pages, got so many tabs in here, and I would definitely recommend this one. I gave this one a really high 4-star rating. I'd even say like 4.5. It was just really fun. I had such a great time reading it. It's just a nice like palate cleanser read, and it was so much fun. Next up, this book made me cry. It was so good. And that is The Front Runner by Elsie Silver. I just love this book so much. She's just she's just taken over my world. Like, these books that she has been putting out are just taken over. So I love this one. I forget which couple's one, honestly. Like, I read this book pretty early in the month, and I'm filming this video kind of late, so not truly remembering what the couple was, but I just remember having such strong feelings while reading this book and just feeling so seen by our female main character in so many different ways, and I just cannot recommend Elsie Silver enough. Like, her books are perfect, and I'm just realizing that cowboy yeehaw romance and horse girl romance are my thing. They're my thing, apparently, because I'm obsessed with Elsie Silver's books. Next up, I read One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig, and this one was okay, but I wouldn't say it's a new favorite by any means. So in this book, we follow our main character, Elspeth, and she has a very dark secret in that she has magic. And in this world, no one is allowed to have magic, and if you do, I believe you get banished or you get killed or something, I don't know. But she has a monster inside of her that we kind of learn how that came to be, and this type of power that she has is very potent, and the kingdom does not want anyone to have these kind of powers. And so she teams up with, I think, the king's own nephew. Yeah, the king's own nephew to try to find all of these cards, because there's a deck of cards in this world that has a lot of power, and the king's nephew wants to collect all these cards, I think to overthrow the king or something. I don't remember. It's been so long since I've read this book, but it was fine. I just don't have very strong feelings about it. I ended up giving it a 3-star. I just remember being kind of bored and definitely not interested enough to read book 2, which I unfortunately bought. So, good on me for doing that. But it was fine. I think there's better romantasy out there for sure, but I also feel like it may not be exactly romantasy, because it was definitely more of like a gothic fantasy story rather than being like actual romantasy. But it wasn't bad, but it definitely was like not my favorite thing. Next up are the books that I read for Camp Witchwood, which was a little week-long read-along in Steph's Patreon, which was so much fun. I got through quite a few books with a very weird theme of eyeballs on the cover. So the first book I have that does not actually fit that theme is What Feasts at Night by T. Kingfisher. This is the second book in the What Moves the Dead series, and this one was okay, but I feel like I really should have reread book 1 before getting into this one, because I feel like I forgot a lot of things, and I really wish I had reread book 1 before starting this one. But it was okay. I gave it 3 stars. Like, it's definitely something I'll forget. Actually, I'm already forgetting it. So it was okay, but it was just like a short little tiny book. Next up, I got some weird eyeball books that I read. So the first one is Mayfly by C.J. Lead. This one was just chaotic. Like, I feel like both of the next books that I have to talk about is like the definition of I support women's rights and wrongs, because truly, oh my gosh. So I don't even know how to describe this book. So this book is very sexually charged, so I would keep that in mind when picking this book up. Like, it's very violent sexual encounters at many points, and I would just maybe keep an eye on that. No pun intended, but it was definitely off-putting, and it was just so strange. Like, I can remember one scene very vividly, unfortunately, and I don't think that's going to be leaving my brain anytime soon. Alrighty, the next one, I just love this Evernight edition of. It's just the most disgusting thing ever, and I just love it. And that is The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim. This was nasty, but it was very interesting. So in this book, we follow our main character and her sister as they live with their mother, and their relationship is kind of tenuous, and their mother starts to go on dates with this guy. I forget his name, but he had like a really boring name, and he's horrible to these two sisters. Like, he's really gross, and he's just so icky. And so our main character, Ji-won, starts kind of developing a little bit of an obsession with eyes, and it just grows more and more intense throughout the book. And wow, the female rage in this book was out of this world. Like, it was fantastic, honestly, and I would highly recommend this one. It's actually quite short, and look at those frayed edges. They're so gross. This whole like design of this book is just horrifying, but it fits the vibe so well. So definitely look into any content warnings for this book, but I'd say this is like the perfect spooky ooky read you should be reading for like the next couple of months. Next up is one of the most terrifying books I think I've ever read. Like, I'm still a little bit scarred from reading this book, which is why I'm taking a big break from horror thanks to this book. And that is The Troop by Nick Cutter. I don't know where I heard it, but I could have sworn I've heard someone on BookTube or somewhere on the Bookternet say that The Troop is one of the scariest books ever written. And I kind of gotta say I agree, because this book was giving me nightmares, it was freaking me out, and I'm still thinking of some things that happened in this book, and it's just, ooh, nasty. So this book is truly disgusting. I really wish there was some content warnings for this book, because I just dove in head first, no idea what I was getting myself into, and wow. Especially reading this like post-pandemic is another experience entirely. Like, I don't know when this book came out, but it just is like, yikes. Okay, wow, this book actually came out 10 years ago. That's insane. So yeah, this book is definitely pre-COVID, but it's reading it after COVID is another experience entirely. So I don't want to get too far into it, but basically we follow these troop of boys who are part of like a Boy Scout group, basically. And they go out with their scoutmaster to this really remote island. I forget what it's called. It had a specific name. It was in Canada, and they go out to this island, and the boys have to like earn their badges and stuff by completing different things. And things start to go very, very wrong. And it reads very similarly to Lord of the Flies. So I'd say if you enjoyed that, you might like this, but this is like 20 times darker. I'm just gonna say that now. But this was wild. I ended up giving it 4 stars just because of how much it absolutely freaked me out. But I definitely need a break from horror books after this. The final book that I read in the month of July was a big ol' chunker. It took me 44 days to read this book. And that is The Way of Kings by Brando Sando. I did it, you guys! I finally read this book! So I have had this book on my TBR for like years and years, and I've just been too scared to pick it up. But I did it, finally read it, and I'm disappointed to say I didn't love it. I gave this one 3 stars, but I do think this book is a good setup book. Like, I think that's why I'm giving it 3 stars, is because it just felt like a setup. There wasn't a whole lot going on. It was just a matter of getting to know our characters. And I do think this book really truly could have been cut down quite a bit. I feel like it was a little long, but on the other side, I think the last like chunk, like the last this much of the book was so good, which I feel like Brando Sando does the best writing and the best plot work in the last part of his books. Like, I feel like the beginning, middle of his books are always a drag for me, which is unfortunate, but he always gets me with his Sanderlanche at the end. So I like this one enough. I do want to continue with the series, but I did learn that physically reading this book was just not for me, and actually listening to the audiobook was way better. I could kind of tune out some of the boring parts, tune in for the more interesting parts, and I just think Brando Sando reads better on audio for me personally. So I'm going to continue with this series on audio at some point. I mean, I don't want to let too much time slip by, but it takes obviously like a month and a half for me to read these books, so definitely need to dedicate some time to them. But it was a 3-star read. Not bad, not great, but I will be continuing, and hopefully it gets better. That is it, friends. Those are all of the books that I read in the month of July. Not a bad reading month by any means, but hoping August is even better. So thank you all so very much for watching, and I will see you all in another video soon. Goodbye!